meaning to do this for quite some time, and obviously tap into your massive knowledge base around budgerigars and all aspects of it, from breeding to showing to diet, everything. So I have a few questions for you. And why not kick off with a traditional one? Just around your background and experience. So how did you actually get into the whole budgie scene? And like a part two to that's like what attracted you to getting into the hobby in the first instance?
Yeah, I suppose like a lot of people, I started off with pet budgies as a child, and they arrived around Christmas morning, and I had those for a couple of years. Then I used to keep pigeons in the yard at home. So I always had an interest in birds. Always, it was the breeding side of it always had me fascinated. And like everyone else, then work comes, you head off. I emigrated twice, came back. As soon as we settled in Galway, I built an aviary in the garden, and everything was stocked into it, and I kept everything for a while, everything from Bengalese, budgies, zebras, canaries, the whole lot. And eventually, then I bought a load of budgies one time, and this will tell you how little I knew. I ended up buying all cocks. I didn't know the difference between a cock and a hen. That's how literally how my
Mm.
knowledge had limited. And I was put in contact with an exhibition breeder in Galway, and I went down to see his birds, walked in the door, saw a stud of grey greens, and that was it. That split second, that was where I wanted. That's what I wanted to do. It was just instant.
The grey greens were the
Yeah,
instigator
yeah.
of
It was the
where you are now.
size. I was just blown away by them, and I just thought, wow. And no other bird has ever done that for me. And it's yeah, and that was in 1999, and I joined the BS in 1999, and yeah, still
So
enjoying the hobby.
27 years more or less experience.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Savage. Savage. So you've obviously seen a hell of a lot of change in the birds over the last, whoa, 2.5 decades, more than two and a half
yeah,
decades.
yeah.
So how do you think that standard has evolved since you started from that day seeing the grey greens
Yeah.
to,
Um,
to now, and like the stages of where you've adapted your breeding program over the years?
yeah. Well, I suppose some things haven't changed. Sourcing good stock is never easy, and starting out is never easy, especially in Ireland, as you know. It's hard. There's a very limited pool of birds in Ireland. There's a very limited supply of equipment and so forth. So those challenges for us have never changed.
Yeah.
Um, the top tier of budgies has just literally been the rate of improvement has just been huge. I
Yeah.
think there was a time I think we got so fixated on feather and size that we lost the shape, we lost the style, we lost the balance, and it was all these extreme feather birds came in. But thankfully that was a short kind of fashion, I suppose, within the hobby, and now we've gone back to the style and the deportment of the bird. So I
When would that have been, Deck? What year would have that in like
Well,
do you,
it's interesting. I came across an old article that I wrote for an interview in Cage and Aviary in 2008. And that year, I said in the article that we were pushing the birds too far. We were creating too extreme a bird. So that was 18 years ago.
yeah,
And it took a long time for it to go full circle, really, and go back to where we are now. That big extreme bird is frowned upon now on the show bench.
yeah.
Where
And
one
when
time,
you say extreme, relative to some of the big birds you see, some of the big European birds now, like
mm,
breeding stock, really, like would they have been that big and then they were pulled back, or not on the scale of what we see today with when it's really
well,
extreme?
yeah, we go into bird rooms and we see big birds, but they're stylish and they have lovely features about them.
Yeah,
But then you have the real extreme birds that are just ugly.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I know people will use them in the breeding cages and use them very well with small typey hens, and they get that balance in between. So you're
yeah,
using your extreme bird to your short-feathered bird, and you're creating a lovely, stylish intermediate bird with some size. So
yeah.
they have their advantages, but they're not coming on the bench from what we can see anyway over here.
Do
Um,
you think that's a risky play? So you're taking a kind of a sloppy, large, heavy feathered bird, you're putting it to maybe a typier bird. Do you
Yeah.
think that that genetics will come back and kick you in the arse a few years down the line in terms of like
Um,
replicating that, or do you think you'll
yeah, well, you
always
see,
get
I
the
think that's where
mixture?
you have to know your birds and you have to keep good records. Good records are so important because I don't know. There was a time when I would remember everything in the boardroom. Now it's a lot different. Maybe I'm getting older. I can't. I have to make notes all the time and keep records
Yeah,
all the time. I always did anyway. But I won't remember back two generations now. For one time, I could remember back three and four, and so I keep the records. But it's just you have to be so conscious. I know when we pair our birds, we're thinking say 2 years down the line. Most of the time.
yeah,
But we nearly have to be thinking 2 years back as well, so we don't repeat mistakes we made before or go back
yeah,
to somewhere we were coming from.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And
Uh,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I remember one time we were over in Germany one year. We went to visit Ralph Jenne, and we were looking at some hens that he had in the breeding cage. And Ralph noticed we were looking at them, and those hens to me were hens that I would have moved on, but I
Right.
didn't realize the benefit and the importance of those hens because, as Ralph pointed out to us, they have the same genetics as other hens that were far better. So
Yeah,
we were letting go of hens from our good cocks, not realizing the benefits that they had for us.
yeah,
So that goes back to the importance of doing every visits. Like every day is a learning day in budgies, and I'm nearly 30 years at it now, and you
yeah,
still learn something new. We still make mistakes, but
yeah,
going back to your original question, the extreme bird, yeah, it's gone off the show bench pretty much now. We do like that lovely wraparound face, um, but we
mm,
want a bird that can fly, and we want a bird
yeah,
that's
yeah,
and we want a bird that's. We don't want birds who never get off the floor of the flights.
yeah,
And those are
100%.
features we have to. They should be first and foremost in our thoughts when we're breeding birds.
Yeah. So if you were to bring it back to today's board, and you mentioned one of the key features that you like or you want to see, is there anything else? If you look at the complete board, what
Yeah.
kind of standard do you aim for now?
Um, well, the first and foremost for me is full feather, tails, flights. I went through a phase where I'd look at a bird and had a lovely face, and I'd use it in the breeding team, but I was ignoring the fact that the bird was missing a tail or missing flights in the wings, and
Yeah,
over time that that creeps into your bird room. So that's a fault we all make. We love the face, but we were blind to the some maybe the faults that we're using. So, I had a bird one time. He was I bought him because he had a lovely face, but he had
right.
no, and I bred
Yeah,
28 chicks out of him. And over time, then that feature creeps into your bird room. So I think we have. I would always be ruthless with birds I let go, but you have to be equally ruthless when you're pairing up and only use the top 10% really in your bird room, really the breeding cages.
you it also kind of spells out you do have to trust the person you're buying from, because if
Yeah,
that individual knows that that bird is tailless and
yeah,
never grew a tail and is coming from a family with that
yeah.
characteristic,
Yes,
you
yes,
know,
yes. Yeah,
you'd like to think that they'd tell you.
yeah, absolutely. And also always try and ask to see the parents.
Yeah,
Whether you're
exactly. Yeah,
buying online or visiting in person, always ask to see the parents, and you see
yeah,
the features that the parents have, and that's really, really important because, um, you know, it's buyer beware really out there nowadays. But you're right, find a breeder that you can trust, and that you can put your faith in. And if you have a breeder that you can trust, and then go back to him and stick with him. If you like the birds, stick with him.
yeah, yeah. Um, so just I obviously know your breeding regime and your stud kind of back to front, but like
Mm.
just for the audience, what bloodlines or features do you prioritize most now in your stud today, and what are you
Yes,
trying to build? What are you
yeah.
trying to build on now?
Uh, Pretty much everything in the shed at the moment has the Hale and Warzeggers bloodline there. Pretty much
Mm,
every, with the exception possibly of two. And as you know, then last year, then I brought in three cocks from Daniel.
yeah,
So they're currently in yours at the moment. But the plan is that I will stick with Martins and Daniels, and that's though I'm not going to be bringing in birds from of other sheds or whatever.
Yeah.
I've gone to the two of them. I like what I see, and I know Martin and Daniel work very closely together. So that's for me. That's the best way forward, and that's the way I intend to stay.
I couldn't agree more, Declan. Funny enough, I have a similar philosophy.
That's
Um,
good. That's good. Well, that's why we're partners, Paul.
that's it. That's it. Um, so yeah, I guess then the natural kind of bridge then is like your breeding philosophy and selection. So when you're pairing birds, if you were to think of three kind of traits you aim to improve or consolidate,
Yeah.
like even just this season, like what would those three traits be?
Yeah, I've always admired a bird that was big in the shoulder, and so that visually when you look at it, it's a broad bird across the chest,
Yeah,
and especially with cocks, you have to have the size in your cocks,
yeah,
and I it's something I've always liked that I like this a powerful bird, and sometimes you can pick up a bird it looks big in the flight, you'll pick him up, and he literally disappears in your hand because he's just feather. That's not really a bird for me. I think you have to have the bone structure there, the body size has to be there. Then when you put the feather on that bird, you have a super bird.
yeah,
So yeah, I like size in the cockbird. If I don't have the cockbird the size, then the hen has to have the size in the breeding cage. Um, so it's a balance of large and medium, or very large and small, in terms of size and in terms of feather. Balance and deportment and style is very important to me. Um, Ideally, we say our best birds are our show birds, but they're also our best breeding birds as well because they have the features we want.
yeah,
And they're small. The modern face of the budgerigar nowadays is has changed so much. We have small, we have that buffalo look, we have that sweeping back feather, and there's so much emphasis on face that if you bring a bird to a show, um, 9 times out of 10 the biggest bird wins, but it has to have that face as well. It has to have that style. That
yeah.
modern look about it as well, because the difference between the older bird and the modern bird nowadays is just it's immense. Really, it's a small feature, but it's very hard to put it there.
And it makes sense what you're saying because that sort of a bird is a healthy bird. I mean, it's got good bone structure to carry its feather, and more often than not, they're the ones that have the vibrance and the fertility as well.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so if you kind of go overboard, you lose that, don't you?
You do,
Have you
yeah,
have you
yeah.
seen that in the past with anything you've bred
Yeah,
where
I've
you?
seen that in the past before where I would have had, big cockbirds, but, they just don't produce. But one thing I found now in my current bird room now, when I finally got it set up there a couple of years ago, I have a 4 meter long flight.
Yeah,
And where before my flights might have been 2 meters, say, but now they're flying the full 4 meters down along. And last year would be the first year where I really noticed that my fertility was absolutely bang on last year. 6 and 7 full eggs, pretty much every nest. Every egg was nearly always fertile. And
yeah,
I know we can say, oh, it's down to the feed, but the flight, the exercise is so important. When those birds the previous year were in a 2 meter flight, they weren't filling half the amount of eggs, even though they
yeah,
were pretty much on the same diet. So flight is huge. Flight is we fitness and flight is a must really.
yeah, 100%.
They
Big
just
long
find a
flight.
way.
It's you're just gonna.
They get lethargic when they're not flying. They're flying together, they're buzzing around, they're chasing each other around the floor, flying up and down. It makes a massive difference. Yeah.
Yeah, it's as a natural as environment as we can provide. Like,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
and you mentioned you had some great size nests last year. So when it
Mm,
comes to when you've got a nice clutch and you're assessing the birds
yeah,
for future show potential, like what age do you make those decisions? Because it's obviously a
yeah.
you know holding on to them for a decent period so you can actually assess them. Can you assess them? You assess them in the nest, obviously, but
Yeah.
when do you make that decision and say, yeah, that's a winner
Oh,
for the bench?
you can I generally hold off until to get to about say 26, 28 days old, and then you're going to see um an explosion of feather growth really at that stage. And up to that point, okay, it might be a good chick. You might ring it at 7 or 8 days old, and you say, okay, this is. Oftentimes, you have good feet on the birds, good strong. I don't like to see these tiny little stringy little toes. For some reason, I don't. It doesn't manifest into a better bird from what I can
Yeah.
see. And but 28, 30 days, that bird should really stand out and say, yeah, when you open those nest boxes and you see those big chicks, there's an excitement there. You say, yeah, I produced something good here. But you won't see that really before 25 days.
Yeah.
Um, and as we've seen it ourselves, we look at them and we get that explosion of growth feather in the last week, and
Yeah.
diet
Yeah.
plays a huge part in that, and pedigree as well. But I generally, I have them weaned off by 35 days. I generally know before they leave the nest box, Paul, what's staying and what's going, or where the potential is. You really, over time, you just, yeah, you can see it there. It's very obvious. I mark it in the diary when I write them in at 35 days old. I'll mark it with I have a system where I mark three X's for a really good bird. That's visually very, very good when it's weaned off,
Yeah.
and it's it never fails. It always turns out to be a good bird. If it's 2 stars, it's there's potential there, but make sure you don't let it go until it's 6 months old. If it's
Yeah.
no star, you know, and very rarely I've had a situation where a bird has had no stars and it'll come back and they do, you generally know.
Yeah. So at that month kind of landmark point, you
Yes.
really do know at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And as you know, they disappear when they go into the flight when they're 2 and 3 months old, and then all of a sudden they reappear, and you pick one up at 4 or 5 months old, and it really catches your eye, and you look in the logbook. Yeah, I gave that 3 stars. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you realize, yeah, I was right back at the time. Yeah, it is nice when you get the odd one you pick up and you give it no stars, and that's why hold on to them as often as you can. If you have the space, don't let them go.
Or one that comes back and bites you that you've
Yeah,
sold.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's happened too. Yeah, a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts around line breeding versus outcrossing versus like using a hybrid strategy? What's
Yeah.
worked best for you?
Um, for me, I've never paired related birds together. It's
Right.
just something that all through the years, in my thinking, that for me to start breeding, pairing related birds together, you have to have really exceptional quality birds to start going down that road. Because that you're trying to reproduce and condense what you have. And
Yeah.
I would always have been very critical of my birds over the years, and I just never was happy enough to say, yeah, I'm happy with them now. I'll try a bit of related pairings, and I still don't. I make a point. I never pair related birds together. I pair purely on visual in terms of their features and what I like to see in both pairs. And I will hold off. I bring in 2 or 3 outcrosses every year and work with those. And yeah, related birds to me just no. I just I was never happy enough that I had the birds that I wanted. There are birds out there now that yes, certainly I could do it, but no, I prefer not to. And starting out in the hobby, some people would say, "Oh, you lose your fertility and you lose size," and there is certainly truth to that. I spoke to a 5 canary breeder one time who explained to me that what they do is they pair related birds all the time together because
Yeah.
they want to keep the size small.
Yeah.
So if you pair related budgies together, well, then you're going to go back to a small bird in time.
Yeah.
So
Works for certain variety or
yeah, yeah,
certain species. Yeah.
yes, it does. Yeah. So if we pair our related budgies together, are we going to lose size? So I'm just not going to take that chance because I like a bit of size in the birds.
Yeah. Which is obviously a key feature for the bench, which is kind of bringing
Mm,
me on to the next set of questions. So just conditioning and show prep. So
mm.
what's your routine around show prep when it comes to conditioning the birds,
Yeah,
dietary and
yeah.
prep around that for a big
Um,
show?
yeah. Well, as you know, I'm not the most avid show supporter, and because it's the breeding I love. But when I
Yeah,
have it in my head that I'm going to do a show, it's 100%. It's no, I'm not going to do it half-heartedly. I'll give it 100%. The show team gets picked out 2 months before the show, and it doesn't come out of the breeding cage. It hasn't been in a breeding cage for a while before that. Really, it's 3 months before, and I pick out my show team. But 2 months before, I'll examine the bird and pull out any broken tail feathers or wing feathers to allow them to come down. And what I do is I usually put two birds to a cage because I
Hmm.
found in the past when I pull dividers and have double and triple breeders and I put them all in together, they're always fighting. So you have bloody heads. So I find that by putting two birds into a cage and leaving those same two birds always together, there's no fighting.
Yeah, and you have to have the luxury of having that space too, I guess.
Yes, and that
Because
was always an
you
issue for me that because I like to breed in the summer and not in the winter, I didn't have cages available to put, say, 15, 20 birds into because I was using them for breeding. So
yeah,
it all the two always clash for me and always did, and so it's a balancing act really. But it's always two birds to a cage, and it's either a cock and a hen or a cock and a cock, and it doesn't matter. I don't have an issue whether it's an adult bird or a young bird, and so they're caged about 6 weeks before the show. I train them pretty much every single day. They get an hour or so in the training cages until I'm happy that they're confident and there's no issues with them. That they're they're happy with the confines of the show cage. They're sprayed
mm,
every day for weeks. Yeah, it easily 4 weeks before the show. I spray them every day, and
right.
the first couple of days they're nervous. After that, they nearly hop into your hand to go into the cage. They don't mind at all. But it just brings out that lovely sheen, and the water runs off the feathers after a few days. And diet wise, it's the same seed mix that's in the flight, but they don't get soft food, and I will just give them extra growths through the food just to add on that
Right.
little bit of weight. Just to bulk them up a small bit, really.
It's a lot of effort with the spraying, isn't it, Deck? Like, I mean,
It
when
is,
you're,
yeah, and it's probably the one part of the show I don't like the show preference, and that's the part I don't like, Paul, because you're catching them up and you're putting. I have a wire cage that I bring in. I put them into that, and there's always the danger. It's a risk factor, but there is the risk that they're going to break a tail feather, or they're going to break a flight feather, or something, or damage something
yeah,
when they're in those cages. But that's a risk we take. I might pull out say 15 birds for a show. If I get 10 or over to the show, I'm happy. But you just have to,
yeah.
it's the worst part of it, really. Yeah, there's nothing
It's
worse
just
than
I was reading it was a forum going back a few years, probably a decade ago, about an Australian breeder was giving advice, and what he was saying was he doesn't spray his birds. Sometimes he's short for time, so what we would do is just completely dunk the bird in
right.
like the baby shampoo, like a couple of dashes of baby shampoo in a bucket.
Wow, yeah,
And he would yeah, dunk the bird and then back into lukewarm water to wash out all the shampoo again. So I
yeah.
was
Well,
thinking it's a
it has,
streamlined way of doing a big risk though.
yeah, big risk. Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, and look, I probably overdrew it. And going back, I think it was when was it? In 2006, Eric Peake visited me in Galway, and I was delighted. I had to me, he was a star of the hobby and a celebrity almost back in the day, and it was so much more knowledge than I had. And he came down to my bird room and he looked at my birds and he looked around and he said, "You've no show preparation area, like I had no training cages, nothing." And he said, and he gave me an incredible bit of advice. He said, "With show preparation, you can make a good bird a great bird." And he was
Mm,
right because up to that point, I didn't spray them, I didn't train them, and that was in 2006. And I was a beginner in 2006. I only started showing in 2004. I didn't show anything for 5 years. But I went to Doncaster that year and showed for the first time. And I brought over, I remember I had 8 any age birds, all of my own, and all 8 of them won their class. And
because of the effort you'd put in
just
after
the
Eric
effort I
Peake
put in,
giving you
yeah,
that piece of
yeah,
advice.
yeah. And there was a couple in the young bird class, and they had won their class. I think of maybe, I think I brought over about 14 birds, and I think 11 won their class. And that was my
Yeah,
first time ever shown in Doncaster. Now there wasn't a hope of that happening had I not got that advice from Eric
yeah,
and followed it, you know, and really taken it seriously and done it right.
yeah. Definitely paid off for you. Um, right. So what else have I got for you here? Yeah, I mean, you mentioned you don't do anything feed adjustments wise or anything in the lead up to show with nutritional supplements in the water or
No,
anything like
no,
that.
no. I never give anything in the
Okay.
water now, Paul. I used to give
Yeah.
stuff in the water one time, but I've stopped because about maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, everything was about supplements. Add this, add that, and we were all jumping on the bandwagon. And I actually noticed that by giving all these supplements, um, the hens were ready to go down, start laying after 3 weeks. It was too much for them, too much for them. And I actually cut back to almost nothing a few years ago, and the chicks are reared much easier.
Right.
I don't have to intervene with syringes or anything anymore. I think we were given way too much
Yeah.
for a bird of its size, to be given all those supplements and all that. We
Uh,
wouldn't do it to ourselves.
And not only that, I mean, it's again, you're trying to make this hobby enjoyable. If you're trying to become super technical and
Yeah,
give them
yeah,
absolutely everything, it's very, yeah, it's mess. It can get messy because it gets inconsistent. Then,
it does.
you know.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
Yeah.
and as you know, we have an issue in Ireland with supply of everything from it's hard to get everything. We can't just drive up the road and get something. I when I would have lived in Galway, I used to have my seed transported, and it was a 4 hour drive to get it shipped.
Yeah.
So we do.
Yeah.
And if we keep it simple, um, it makes life a lot easier for us and the birds. I just think the
Mm.
birds respond to simple simple diets. Healthy diet, good diet, but
Consistency.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Is there any kind of golden nuggets you'd offer by way of show preparation? Any tips?
Yeah, there is one thing that, and it would have come up for me last year. I had a lovely yellow-faced cinnamon blue cock current year. No matter how many times I tried him in a training cage, he was never relaxed. He was never happy in it. So you just take the decision with a bird like that, put him back into flight. No matter how good
Yeah.
he is, if he's stressed, up and down in the corner, moving around the cage, no. Ideally, your training to have quiet, steady birds that are
Yeah.
relaxed and not put them under stress going because it's not worth it. He's just not. He's just going to be buried in the corner of the cage all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Some
has.
some breeders kind of don't even. s- I've heard a couple of guys say that they know a showboard from the flight, and they believe that if it's a showboard, it's a showboard. They don't need training. You know.
Yeah,
So
that is true to a point. There is a steadiness that's in certain birds, and they just get into a cage and they just stand out and they just look the part. It's almost like, come look at me. But there are birds then too that are just too nervous, and no matter what you can do, they won't ever settle. So
yeah.
I just don't. Yeah, leave them at home is the only thing I'd say there.
Do you ever see the guys doing? They put ping pong balls on the base of the cage.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
never
yeah,
never bothered trying that sort of stuff, and I'd be
yeah.
an advocate similar to yourself. If it's not ready, don't bother.
Yes, yeah.
But did you ever do anything like that?
No, never did. No, no. I've seen those and heard those things over the years. Yeah, but nah, I wouldn't really know.
Yeah,
Um, Yeah, I give him an hour or two every day. When I go in the morning to feed the birds, I just pick out the show team, bang them into the training cages for an hour or two, and just carry on with whatever I'm doing for the day. But you soon know if they're comfortable in the show cage, they soon settle down. With the young birds, I might put them in an adult bird in with a young bird,
yeah,
and if the adult bird after a couple of days, the two of them just end up sitting beside each other, and yeah, the older bird will just steady them.
yeah,
I don't have to train in cages in the flight or anything. Um, I know that's a popular thing with people. I don't. Um, it's just one of those things. But I think the showbirds pick themselves, don't they? In the end, some of them, most of them do.
yeah. They do. They
Yeah,
really do. From a chick the
yeah,
temperament
yeah,
if it matches with.
yeah. And I think there's a good point you nearly mentioned there is the chicks handling them every day. And I every nest I handle them twice a day.
Yeah.
Take them out in the morning. I check the rings, check for dirt behind the ring, and so forth. And that steadiness is great for them because when you handle them every day, that wildness and that fear isn't the same in them. So it really it pays dividends down the line.
Yeah, and it's actually amazing. A hen I had to take away just a couple of days after she jumped, because the hen was attacking her, and I've put her in a show cage because that's really the only option I have. But I'm handling her every day because I have to clean the show cage, and it's amazing the transition from the start of the week to the end of the week and how the temperament changes and the fear goes in them. So
It
it's
does. Yeah,
definitely
it
worth.
does. It's a great help. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, just on the health of the birds, it's always at the forefront of the breeders' minds. But like, if you were to offer a beginner or anyone really, what do you think the you know health challenges are for exhibition budgies, and
Yeah,
what's your
gosh,
regimen there?
and, there's so many things that we make mistakes as we go along over the years, things we do, and you end up losing birds and birds getting sick because of, in hindsight, would be silly mistakes, but they're just things we do, thinking we're doing the right thing at the time. I remember when I lived in Galway, and it was just so damp and so wet and so stormy all the time. The shed was very damp, and I remember at the time I was trying to breed in the winter, so I closed the window and closed the door and put on the heat. But in hindsight, it was a disaster because there was no ventilation then.
Mm,
So it's just a breeding ground for bacteria. No matter how much you clean the place, you need ventilation. Where now, my bird room, the door is open all day, the window's open all day. You
yeah,
don't. It's the complete opposite. But the
yeah.
birds are far far healthier. And I think with the modern bird, they can be soft. A draft is not a good idea, certainly for them. Um, I don't breed in the winter anymore. I just find for me, we were putting the birds under stress. Um,
Yeah.
we're trying to recreate conditions similar to nature to force them to breed, and in a
Hmm.
lot of cases, people don't have the bird rooms that suit that kind of environment. A lot of people just maybe have a timber shed. They mightn't have a proper light in it. They might, there's little things.
Yeah.
Um, they're really good bird rooms that we all admire on YouTube and these places. They have state of the art setups, and it's
It's
easier.
expensive, as I've discovered recently, to keep a heater on over a couple of months. You get a surprise with the electricity bill as well. So
Absolutely, yeah,
if you're
yeah.
trying to kind of keep the hobby reasonable,
Yeah, you want to. Yeah, nearly have to budget your extra electricity charges. Yeah, you do. Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I generally, March is plenty of time to be starting wrapping up. I mean, have everything wrapped up completely by Christmas. You end
yeah.
up breeding, much easier, much less stress in the birds, and stress is a big thing for the birds. There's no doubt about
Hmm.
it. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Medication wise, I'm not a huge giver of medication, although I do give Ranella every 3 months. I give it to him for the 7 days, change it every day for 7 days. It does make a huge difference to the birds. And where you actually tend to see it is with the chicks being fed in the nest.
Yeah,
Um, if it's gone, if it's not in their system, the chicks tend to be, your casualty rate is higher. Uh, the, the the quality of feeding from the hen is not what you want it to be. So
yeah.
that's a good one. Red
That's
mite is another good one.
what's the molecule deck? Ronnie Dazole, is that what it is? Because Renella's a brand name, right? So
Yeah, yeah. Ranella's the one we get over here, which is Ronazole, or I'm not sure what it is.
how do you pronounce it?
We get it as Ranella here, and I just mix half a cap, with a little spoon inside, and I make half a measuring spoon to a liter of water,
Yeah.
and every day for 7 days, every 3 months. That's the way I give it to
Good idea is, I think I use a 2 liter bottle, but having a funnel to keep the powder in the bottle and not on the floor is
him. Yeah,
it's very
yeah.
important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, red mite was a thing I had a couple of years ago, and it's terrible to get rid of it. And I tried lots of different things, but the only product that I found is guaranteed to eliminate it straight away is Exalt.
Yeah.
it's not the cheapest product to get, but it's probably the best £50 or €50 you'll spend,
Yeah.
depending on what size bottle you're buying. But it is really, really, really potent stuff. It's very good.
And how often do you give that deck? What's the
I'm not
regimen
giving
there?
any at all, Paul, at the moment because there is no red mite in the shed, and I
Yeah.
would be a stickler for watching out for the signs under the perches and the clips, anywhere at all, and like they'll find a place to hide. And what I generally do is I have say a round dish that I put in the flight, and I leave it on top of two old concaves on the floor, and I check
Right.
under those twice a week or three times a week. I lift them up, examine them because that's a perfect place for the red mite to go. And
Yeah.
if it's not there, and if there's no signs of it, I don't give them the exote. It's extremely strong. I mean, it's developed for poultry. So if it ain't broken, don't fix it. And
Yeah.
if I get it, if it comes back, certainly by all means, I'll give it to him again. But when it's not there, I'm not going to give it to him. It's
So
just
whereas Ranella is a preventative, this
yes,
is just
yeah.
an acute for acute cases where you see the
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
might. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I keep Baytril there, Baytril 2.5. It's a kind of a broad spectrum antibiotic. Um, but I don't give them any courses of antibiotics because there's generally no need. We get an odd bird sick now and again. We remove it, give it a bit of heat, and it's fine.
Hmm.
But I don't give them like a week course of an antibiotic once or twice a year. I just leave them be, really.
Yeah. One of the things I've used there recently, I had a good chat with the lads from the north when they were down, was the for eye infections. Um, I don't know whether you use anything for that. Like if you've got a bird with an eye infection, do you dose some
Yeah,
eye
there was
drops?
a product. I'd have to go looking through the drawer out there. Pred Forte was a product we used to have one time, and you just put a little drop in the eye, and it's like a little blister in the eye or a little, yeah, and it generally clears it up pretty quick. But no, I've been lucky. I'm one thing about the eye infections, and it's that's where your clean perches often come into play as well because
Yeah,
birds are, if they're standing on dirty perches all the time and their feet are on dirty perches and they're scratching their eyes, whatever. So that a lot of that can come down to general hygiene in your bird room as well.
yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, you can. I've seen it with cockbirds that have, that wraparound feather in the head,
Yeah,
and when they're feeding chicks in particular, they're going in and out of the nest box. If the perches
yeah,
are dirty as well, it doesn't help. But that's where I see the eye infections.
yeah,
But yeah. So just like so, you've mentioned Ranella, Exalt,
yeah,
Baytril when you need it.
yeah.
What is there anything else you use, or is,
I
is that
I
pretty much
have
it?
I'm a stickler for the original Dettol as a cleaning agent. That's
Yeah,
my go-to product for cleaning all the times. Like for instance, I would I would change the bedding every second day when the chicks are in the nest box, say from 2 weeks on,
yeah,
and it's a constant thing of switching out. If there is say a wet concave, you take it out straight away, and it gets washed in Dettol, cleansed. Everything goes through Dettol. It's brilliant. It's just
yeah,
that product that it's safe for humans, it's safe for babies, and it's safe for the birds. But it's a
yeah,
great product for just killing any bacteria in the shed. And I think that years ago you go visit bird rooms and under the perches in the nest boxes there will be 2 inches of droppings. I mean, God,
yeah.
that's
You're asking for trouble.
asking for trouble. Yeah, just yeah, being I used to clean my cages every day. I don't have time anymore, but I do make a point that they get fully cleaned out. The trays are taken out, everything goes out at least twice a week. Usually it's a Wednesday and a weekend day, and I always stick to that routine
Yeah,
because you leave it there, it's just bacteria is a huge issue. So um, and one of the things I started last year was I started giving them hard boiled eggs in
right.
in the soft food, and it was one of the things that Daniel recommended when we were over. And the thoughts of giving them hard boiled eggs, the first thing people would think, oh, salmonella. So it's just gotta keep on top of your cleanliness and keep things nice and clean and ticking over.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Um, just with respect to like outcrosses coming into your boardroom, or even when anytime you kind of bring your birds to a show,
Yeah.
do you have any routine around that just to ensure nothing spreads in the room?
I don't really, because the birds are caged generally for a couple of weeks before they go. They're not in the flight, so when they come back, they go straight back into the same cage again, and I leave them there for a week or 10 days, and before they go back in. You see, with here we don't have many shows. You might have a show maybe in June and a show in September, so the show season here is extremely short. So
Yes.
I would generally put them back into the cage for a week or 10 days after they come back, and then they go back to the flight. Um, with outcrosses coming in, I suppose. Look, that's if you're worried about the health of a bird when you buy it and where it's been housed, well, then you shouldn't be buying the bird in that place in the first place.
Yeah, true.
And that's something that's really, really important. It's very easy to buy a bird online now. Like when I started, you picked up the phone and you say, "Can I come and see your birds?" And
Hmm.
generally, everywhere I went, I would go and see the birds, but I would never buy in the first visit. I'd go and
Yeah,
see the breeder, meet the breeder. If I liked what I saw, I'd go back a second time. And but nowadays, people just go online or go on Messenger and they buy birds without even seeing the sheds or whatever. And really, that's one of the
yeah,
best parts of the hobby is go and meet the bird room, see the breeder, chat about the birds, and there's so many things you can learn. Like I can
yeah,
remember some of the things we learned last year going to Daniel's, that there's always something new that you can try, and advice you can pick up. So it's one of the best parts of the hobby. If given the choice, if you ask me to go to a show or go to a bird room, it would be a show every day for me. Or
yeah.
sorry, a bird room every day for me. Yeah.
I knew you meant that.
Yeah,
Um,
I just love going and seeing the birds in their natural, in their environment where they're relaxed, and it's just far better. You
and
just
you're more inclined to build a rapport with the person as well if you're buying, and you're
absolutely.
obviously seeing the bird in its natural environment. You're
Yeah, yeah,
seeing the
yeah.
parents. You're seeing everything. So it's a much better investment, if you ask me,
It is.
going and buying rather than doing that online.
Yeah,
But
it is.
but that's a luxury as well. Like if you're wanting to buy on the continent, you have to fork out, accommodation, flights,
Yeah, yeah.
transport, all that.
But from our experience, it's money well spent, isn't it?
Yeah, a hundred
Without a doubt.
percent. Yeah, if it's in your budget, happy days.
Yeah,
Go to
exactly. Yeah, yeah. It is
it.
without a doubt, because you were pretty handy at the AI, so you're very familiar with. You
I'll
can.
be using this to make you more handsome.
Oh, well, I don't think AI is able to do that yet. But I mean, you look at a bird online and you see a picture, but sometimes when you see it in person, it's totally
Yeah,
different. So
yeah,
yeah, no, I would always say pick up the phone, go visit, and even just not to buy, just go and visit, especially for beginners and novices.
yeah,
I probably have visited probably 50 bird rooms across the UK, maybe another 15 or 20 in the continent, and every one of them I can remember. And but a show is a great day out. You meet people and you see the birds, but I think the real beauty of the hobby is going to bird rooms for every visit.
yeah, 100%. Yeah. Um, just to kind of go back, like on the topic of management and health with
Mm.
hens, more so than cocks, when they finish their breeding cycle, like
Yeah,
you do what? You do 2 rounds max normally,
always
or
2 rounds. Yeah, always 2 rounds. Yeah, yeah,
like I've often seen hens, when you put them back in the flight after 2 rounds, the stress,
yeah.
of or even not even putting them in the flight. If you take the cock away and just let them rest, sometimes they
Yes,
just go down. I
they
feel.
do. Yeah, and of
Do you,
course.
do you ever see what's your approach to that?
Um, yeah, a good few years ago, and it happened to me for several years, and it was an issue that I didn't know how to approach. When I had finished my breeding seasons, the hens obviously they weren't going straight back into the main flight, but I always found that I used to lose several of them every year, and so I had a holding cage at like a small little flight in a corner, and the hens would go in there, and just to recuperate, just to get their strength back up and build
Yeah,
themselves up, because we don't realize how much effort goes into rearing chicks.
Hmm.
and a lot of our problems um, in the nest boxes uh, come down to feeding really. Um, but the hens, when I take them out, I would generally leave them resting for a couple of weeks, and they normally go into the flight with the babies. We
Yeah.
have a mobile flight there. It's about it's nearly 6 foot long. The babies are in there until they're 4 or 5 months old. The hens will go in with them, and there's no cocks. They can just relax, chill out, and in time then go back to the main flight. Um,
Yeah.
and just get the same diet as all the rest of them. But yeah, I think it's a bit stressful just taking them out of the breeding cage, and you can't just throw them back into the main flight. It's just way too much for them. Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
if
You
possible,
need to
let them
allow
leave
recuperation.
them with their cock if you can as well for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and then again, probably circling back a little bit, just on optimum clutch sizes. I know you have an opinion on that, and
Yeah.
you know what you've seen over the years in terms of clutch size and the quality of the birds that come out. What do you see there?
Yeah, and we've discussed it ourselves quite a bit over the last few months on things that we have noticed as well. Generally, for a maiden hen, I just like no more than 3 chicks. I like to leave them with. An experienced hen is fine with 4, um, and the maiden hen is 3. But I that's it. No fives, no sixes, absolutely not. Um,
Yeah.
and then, say for instance, with good pairs that might be filling 6, 7 eggs, obviously you want to maximize and get as many out as you can. I have no problem leaving a hen on a clear round of eggs and then just transferring full eggs underneath her, then close to hatching, and let her rear those. And
Yeah.
I find that you have to maximize, get the most of your fertile eggs weaned and on the perch. So,
Hmm.
but not to the expense that you leave 5 and 6 in the nests with the parents. I don't think they're not all going to reach their full potential if there's too many in the nest box.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
And one thing we have noticed, you and I have discussed it, is some hens are better feeder than others. Um,
Yeah.
and one thing that's really really important that I see is when a new chick hatches, is to see that crop with a rich feed of crop milk straight away after it's born. And
Yeah.
um, I remember when I used to spend time on my uncle's farm as a kid, and when a heifer would have its first calf, it was so important to get the colostrum into that calf within the first few hours, because that,
Mm.
they believed at the time, and rightly so, was connected to the overall health and immune system of that calf for later in life. So, and we've seen it ourselves, and we've really noticed it now, that the hens that are really poor feeders, very little crop milk, those chicks don't thrive, don't reach potential at all.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That is definitely a massive, massive issue if
Yeah,
it doesn't
yeah,
happen.
yeah.
It's
You
the
can
most,
see
I
some.
think, I find it's the most rewarding and the most stressful phase
Yeah.
is when that egg hatches and you're just waiting to see if the hen feeds it, you know?
Yes, yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And if they're not, and it can even be a proven hen, Paul, a hen that has reared before, if she's not in peak condition and the diet isn't 100%, um,
Or if the cock is just acting the maggot.
yeah, exactly, yeah. If she hasn't got that food in her system, she's not going to produce the crop milk for you. And what I do as well, about 2 3 days before the first chick would be due to hatch, I always give them an extra small dish of Japanese millet into the breeding cage. It's
Yeah,
just that extra little bit of protein in the food to have for them, and they'll take to it straight away. And it generally, it definitely helps the birds.
yeah,
Soft food is in the cage, breeding cage, every single day from the time they go in. I feed it 365 anyway. But
yeah,
the years gone by, people will give a finger drawer of soft food to a pair rearing chicks. Like, that's, thankfully we've come a long way from then anyway.
yeah, yeah. Those are all really good tips there. Where will we go next, Deck? Do you want to talk about show strategy? Like, is there any? I know we've mentioned show training, but like when it comes to planning for a show and what birds you're going to take, and do you have any particular way of thinking on that front?
Yeah.
Or
Well, if I go to a show, Paul, I generally bring one of any color. I don't see the logic in bringing three birds in the one class. Um,
Yeah.
if I go to a show, personally I like to compete for CCs. Um, I don't see beyond that. Win a class and compete for a CC, and that's as far as I expect. If that's the height of my ambition if I go out. Um, Anything extra then is a bonus, obviously, but. Uh, I generally will always catch up maybe two of any colour, and I'll bring the best of the two if it's available on the day.
Yeah.
A lot of people over the years I met don't show hens. I have no issue showing hens. Don't mind showing hens at all. If
Right.
it's a good hen, it's a nice hen. Yeah, she goes into the show team. Um, and I generally would like to show a kind of a 50-50 split of adult birds and young birds. But
Why do you think that is, Deck, on the hen front? Why do
sorry,
they do that? Why do some breeders not bother with showing hens?
I don't know. It was just something that it was I picked up on when I started showing that you might get maybe 20% of the birds in the shows would be hens.
Right.
No, and I always to me that was an option. If you have a good chance with a hen, well, there's a good chance of a best opposite sex award. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so yeah, the hens were the thing. I mean, when I started, some of the advice I was given, Paul, was don't keep opening cocks. They're no good.
Right.
Yeah, I mean now obviously the logic is different. I think an opening cock is a super bird. I've always liked opening cocks.
Yeah.
Cinnamons, don't use cinnamons; they'll take over your shed.
Yeah.
Silly things like that. But I mean, the value of a cinnamon bird, a cinnamon feather in the shed now is highly regarded.
100%. Yeah. I mean, the mix of opaline, cinnamon, the feather quality that you're
Yeah,
getting
yeah,
from the
yeah.
two.
Every
Yeah.
single bird in my shed is either visual cinnamon or split cinnamon. Um, I
Yeah.
don't. I normally wouldn't pair cinnamon to cinnamon, but that's just so that I get a mix in the nest box. I just it's nice to see a little bit of a choice coming.
Yeah. Okay. Look, that's some great stuff there. Like, is there any golden rules you'd offer? Just we're closing up the show now.
Yeah,
What would your golden tips be for breeders?
yeah. Do you know? I sat down and I wrote a couple of things down.
Yeah.
And I said there's a friend of mine locally, and he's starting into the hobby again, and you know it's very easy for me to say, well, this is what I do, and this, everybody has their own way of doing things, and it works. Everything works right. What will work for you would work for everybody else. But we all have our own way of doing things, and we have our little management routines and so forth. But for someone starting off, yeah, some of the tips I would give would be buy the best bird you can get your hands on. It doesn't have to be visually, but certainly the pedigree is the important thing. Um,
Yeah.
and work with it and stick with it and give yourself 3 years working with it and just be patient. I think a lot of people out there now just want to have that instant stud of birds in their shed, and they haven't got the patience to stick with it. Um,
Hmm.
don't scrimp on another one. Don't scrimp on food. People
Hmm.
will buy a bag because it's €5 cheaper, and they think, oh well, I'm saving €5 in a bag, but you're really the birds
Yeah.
really thrive on it. Yeah, it's feeding. It's hugely important. To get the best development out of the bird, it doesn't stop when they're weaned. It's all the way through. So, um, feed the best all year round. Feed the best and buy the best is two very very important things. And
Yeah.
go visit the boardrooms. Be patient. Bottled water is something I've had to give for years here in Ireland because the public water system is far from reliable. There's too many chemicals going into it. So I
Yeah.
learned the hard way back in 2015. Um, Other things I made a note of them. Yeah, don't sell youngsters too early. Let them molt out. Just chuck them in the corner and leave them there. Have a look at them in 6 months' time if you have the space.
Hmm.
Um, and good records are really important as well, Paul, because I certainly find as I get older, I can't remember everything. And but I do I've always kept really, really good records. Um,
Mm.
and every bird that I've rung, I really make a point of making sure I know the pedigree of it. And
Yeah.
and it's great now because we all take photographs of birds, we have videos of our birds, and we like something, we take a video of it when it's 6 weeks old, and then it's 6 months old, and we can chart progression as well. And
Yeah.
that's really, really helpful as well because, those are little things you look back on and you see it comes up, say, on your Facebook feed. You say, oh, memories from last year, and you see a bird that you had, and you see the improvements. There's
It's a way of cataloging your birds, isn't it? That's
yeah,
that's
it
what I
is.
kind
Yeah,
of use it for. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Um, Another thing, one of the other things I was saying, I mentioned the regular cleaning of the nest box and the cage floors. Um, yeah, just buy from two breeders if you can. It's very important. And I did it myself when I was doing it. Um, Going around, we love going looking at birds, and we go into sheds. Oh, and we like what people have, and we want to buy something of it. But if you can just sit down and work with two breeders, two
Hmm.
birds you like, and have a relationship with them where you can build a bit of trust there and go back to them each year, that definitely works. And going back to another thing, we touched upon earlier, and we might have a good pair, but if the hen isn't feeding, don't force her into a second round because it'll only get worse the second round.
Yeah.
That's really important, and they need the rest. Definitely
It's
need the rest.
tuning into their behavior, isn't it?
It
Because you
is,
can
yeah.
be
The signs are
because like
there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, and
absolutely.
I'm only learning that this year. Like I had a hen that produced a really good chick for me, and I could see her. She was struggling, and I was tempted to go again. I said, no, I'm just going to put her back, let her rest, put her into the flight, and try again in
Yeah,
4 months, 3 months.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, we want to get the good chicks, and 2 rounds is enough for any hen. Give them the break and go again later on, and just it's more about it is a numbers game to a point. You, especially starting off, you need to breed your own and you need to develop your numbers. But I think it's equally as important as that is to only keep the very best going forward. If you're going into your breeding season, keep the very, very best. I literally have 16 cocks out there now.
Yeah,
I have 20 breeding cages. I won't use the 20. I'll use 15, but I have
yeah,
16 cocks in the adult flight, and that's enough for me. And in the young bird flight, there's another 16 coming through for the latter end of this year. But um, I just over the years we keep too many, and if it's not a bird that you're excited about breeding with, move it on.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
just
No, that's wise words as well. Because when we're talking about the costs, you're feeding birds that you're never going to do much with.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know.
yeah. And it's similar to Paul too. To if you're looking in your flight and you're putting if you're not really excited about putting that pair down and seeing what's coming, and
Yeah.
if it's no good pulling a pair out of a flight just to make up a pair in the nest box.
Hmm.
You have to have a vision and a thought process there behind that pair to wait, to take them out of the free breeding flight and put them in.
Yeah.
If we all go, if people have, there's no point in having 50 breeding cages going you know if the quality starts dipping after 12 or 14. You're
Yeah.
just going to work on yourself,
The
and
probability is extremely low that they're going to
it
produce what you
is,
want.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Mhm. Very good. All right. Well, listen, they're extremely useful tips, I think, and great conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Um, I'll post it up there with Lou Toff's video. You've been Pride of Place,
Oh
Lou
yeah,
Toff, Robbie Lawler on deck.
the master and apprentice.